The Heartland. British Columbia is north, and British Columbia is south. Where people are born free and taxed to death. Where there are no sky trains. Where there are no bike lanes. Where the Liberals want to unfairly punish people for their lifestyle with a carbon tax. When forestry is at a standstill, when mills are closing, and when a recession is eating away at people's savings, the Liberals' carbon tax will unfairly affect people living in Prince George, in Williams Lake, and in Kamloops. But for the mansion living, helicopter commuting, Vancouver businessmen, the Liberal carbon tax means more air travel, larger homes and secondary cottages, more and bigger cars, and more consumption of goods and services in general. For the heartland of the province, the regressive carbon tax means a greater share of household budgets will go to heating, transportation, and food. The Liberals say that there can be no exemptions to the carbon tax. However, this ever-increasing tax is not applied to international aviation or shipping, nor is it applied to exports due to competitiveness concerns. The bottom 20% of income earners will be hardest hit, while the top 20% will actually receive a net gain by 2011. The Liberal government has forgotten that for people living in the interior, their air pollution concerns come from industrial emissions, cement and aluminum production, and fugitive emissions from pipelines and landfills, which aren't affected by the carbon tax either. It took 8 years of Liberal mismanagement to finally get rid of the Coquihalla toll booth, and now they've replaced this toll with a tax. The NDP wants to amend the Liberal carbon tax to deal with the real inconvenient truth: the growing gap between the interior of the province and the legislature in Victoria. Gilbert Murphy, age 74, is fed up. He's never waved a placard or marched in a protest in his life. But recently, he hitched up his horses and led a convoy of a dozen wagons into Williams Lake in protest of the unfair Liberal carbon tax. Gilbert says, "Politicians aren't doing anything for us up here. They're so full of bullshit." Gilbert lives where the seasons are extreme. In the winter, there's ice and snow. In the spring and fall, there's mud, and there's more mud. Previous governments used to recognize this burden and offer people living in the interior discounted farm gasoline, but the Liberals want to take this away. Previous governments used to recognize that having a reliable vehicle is not something he or anyone else in the interior should be punished for. Gilbert, driving his grandkids to hockey, towing his trailer and hauling his cattle, burns as much fuel as the average driver in Vancouver does, idling in gridlock traffic. While those in Vancouver receive new highways and SkyTrain lines, with the taxes of the heartland, the Liberals' regressive carbon tax is motivating voters in the southern and northern interior to protest because of how unfairly this tax will affect their cost of living. The carbon tax shows voters how out of touch Gordon Campbell and the Liberals are with voters in the interior. On May 12th, join Gilbert Murphy and the rest of the interior in fighting for an amendment to this unfair tax by voting for Carol James and the NDP.
Well, they tell me of a pie in the sky waiting for me when I die. But between the day you're born and when you die, they never even seem to hear you cry.